Good morning. It's really good to be with you this morning. And thank you very much, Sue, for the wonderful reading. I'd like to show you something, if you don't mind. Some of you may know that I have a bit of a heart issue. Nothing drastic, but I need to take care of my heart. And one of the ways I do that is by taking these, and these, and these, and these, and these, and these. Those tablets help keep my heart strong and healthy. And this morning I want us to think about how we can keep our hearts healthy. Not the physical ones, but the ones that the dictionary describes as the seat of the affections or sensibilities, collectively or separately, as love, hate, joy, grief, courage and the like, the seat of understanding or will, usually in a good sense, the better or lovelier part of our nature, the spring of all our actions and purposes, the seat of moral life and character. I'd like to describe that as our spiritual hearts. And I want us to consider this morning how we can keep our spiritual hearts healthy. Our Bible reading from Luke records how two followers of Jesus, shaken up by the last week of events, Jesus' trial, his death, his appearances, were headed out of Jerusalem and all the events there to the town of Emmaus. Present day it's called Carmel Camasay. One we know was called Cleopas. We don't know much about the other. Anyway, as they set out on the 7-mile walk from Jerusalem to Emmaus, they both had serious heart issues. Have you ever noticed that some of the saddest words in our language begin with the letter D? Disappointment, doubt, disillusionment, defeat, despair. And all of these were summed up in the words of Cleopas and his companion as they met with the stranger who joined them on the Emmaus road. They had left the dispirited and dejected, two more D words, band of disciples with the events of Good Friday fresh in their minds. We can sympathise with their bewilderment. The master they had revered and loved had been horribly put to death by crucifixion, a demeaning death, a death which showed the person as a public spectacle. Only a week before, on Palm Sunday, everybody had been shouting and hoping that the Messiah was arriving. But then their hopes were dashed and their dream was over. The band of Jesus' followers were leaderless and falling apart. And these two were on their way out of the city. The reports that Jesus' tomb was empty did nothing to alter their thinking. It only confused them. Their entire world had come apart. The two despondent disciples summed up the situation very neatly. We had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. Human hope is a fragile thing, and when it withers, it's difficult to revive. We are beginning to learn that coronavirus is difficult to find a cure for. Hopelessness as a disease of the human heart and spirit are also desperately hard to cure. The Emmaus two, as we'll call them, had erected a wall of hopelessness around themselves. They were trapped in their misery. We had hoped. What they were saying is, we don't expect it now, but once we did, we had it, this thing called hope. But now it's gone. I wonder if this is something we can identify with. Has something happened, or has someone come between our relationship with God? Have we lost hope? Have we begun to doubt God, especially in these difficult times? If so, listen on, because the Emmaus story, the heartbreaking experience, is only beginning. As the travellers made their weary way to Emmaus, a stranger fell alongside them. It was going to be one of the most wonderful walks in history. We know, of course, it was the risen Jesus, but somehow they didn't recognize him. In fact, Luke tells us they were kept from recognizing him. Do you know, sometimes it's difficult for us to see what God is doing when we're in the middle of a difficult or painful experience, in the sea of heartbreak. It's so easy for us to forget all his promises too. When he says he would never leave us or forsake us, that applies even in the middle of heartbreak or lockdown. When he says he will supply all our needs according to his riches in glory, that's true in tough times as well as good. And especially when he says that all things are working for the good for those who love him. Even our heartbreaks can be redeemed and turned into something useful. But if all you know is what you see with your own two eyes, you're in trouble. We need to understand that Jesus knows all our doubts and concerns. He sees our heartbreak. He wants to point us to the answer. He doesn't want to leave us high and dry. He wants to take us further in our faith, past pat answers and easy alibis. This story teaches us that Jesus walks at our pace and helps us in our faith as fast or as slowly as we can take it in, as we communicate with him and are pointed in the way of hope to the one in whom hope is to be found. But first things first, in our story, it's at this point that the disciples' heart-breaking experience changes to a heart-searching experience. Their spokesman, Cleopas, expressed surprise at even being asked what was worrying them. Are you the only one living in Jerusalem who doesn't know the things that have happened in these days? He says. There seems to be a note of incredulity in the voice of Cleopas. But Jesus continues patiently and innocently and asks, what things? About Jesus of Nazareth, they eagerly reply, and then talked about Jesus in the past tense. Jesus was dead and gone in their hearts and minds. We've all heard exciting testimonies of what Jesus has done in the past. But what about the present? The past is history. The question must be, is Jesus a present, bright reality in your life, in your experiences, in your words? Do we recognize him beside us? Life can grind us down in so many ways that we carry on mechanically, never lifting our eyes or minds from the dust of the earthly roads we travel. We become unaware of the glory and strength of his presence with us. Life loses its meaning and leaves us washed out. But this story gives us hope, because Jesus is still here. In spite of what we're going through, in spite of how we feel, he is the unseen stranger, walking with us, listening to us, and if we are willing to hear his voice, revealing himself to us afresh. As the two disciples spoke of the cross, he took hold of their bewilderment and sorrow and gave them a heartening experience. How did he do it? Well, Luke tells us. And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, Jesus explained to them what was said in the scriptures concerning himself. When Jesus comes into our lives, probes our thoughts, it's always for the purpose of blessing us. But he can cause us to do some heart searching, as he did the disciples on the road to Emmaus. And when that happens, do we, like the disciples, welcome his initiative and let him minister to us? Or do we ignore him? Anyway, when they'd been given the exposition from scriptures, they reacted positively. And in fact, having had a heart-searching experience, they began a heart-burning experience. The journey from Jerusalem to Emmaus must have seemed like 5 minutes, being so wrapped up in this absorbing conversation with the Lord they hadn't yet recognized. Luke informs us that as they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus acted as though he was going to go further. Interesting to note that Jesus is a gentleman and would never force himself on us if he's not really wanted or welcomed. He awaited their invitation. We're told that Jesus acted as though he was going further. It was a kind of test to see if the disciples had more appetite for the things of God. They did. We're told they urged Jesus strongly, stay with us. That's the kind of invitation that Jesus can't resist. He went in to stay with them. They needn't have asked him in. He was ready to move on. But no, their hearts had been won over. They wanted more. A basic meal was quickly got ready. The bread is on the table, and the moment for Jesus' disclosure has come. How does he do it? He took bread, gave thanks and broke it, and began to give it to them, the Bible tells us. It was in the action of breaking of bread. In an instant they knew him. And then in an instant he went. I can imagine Cleopas and his friends standing in absolute amazement, looking round and wondering what had happened. Perhaps they embraced. Perhaps they asked each other questions. But then they said to each other, were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scripture to us? Their worlds had come together again. The heart-burning experience is something that we all need. At the risk of being controversial, I'm going to say that Jesus wants us all to have heartburn. Not the kind of heartburn that requires rennies, not indigestion, but hearts that are on fire for him. And the source of that burning heart is a walk with Jesus. The word burn means to set on fire, to kindle, to consume, to light. Jesus ignited something in these two followers. He gave them understanding. He opened their eyes. He gave them a passion and a purpose where all there had been was pain and disappointment. And it came from two things. And these are the basics of a walk with Jesus. Spending time with him. Prayer. And spending time in the scriptures, the Bible. The burning heart, our healthy and wholesome heart, will find its fuel in prayer and the Bible. These ignite us. These change us. These are the connections to God. When John Wesley first began working to please God and found a relationship with Jesus, he said that his heart was strangely warmed. Probably words you've heard before. Later on, he was asked what the secret of his ministry was, and he said, I ask God every day to set me on fire and let people watch me burn. His whole life was a life of heartburn, a burning heart for Jesus, a passion to live for him. Today, as we sit glumly in lockdown, let's decide to get past hurts and disappointments and frustrations of this life and press on further in our walk with Jesus with burning hearts. Stay safe. See you soon.